This story is titled, My Fiancée Threatened to Abandon Me, so I swiftly packed her belongings and showed her the exit. Her subtle hints about potentially leaving backfired when I preemptively removed her from my life, leaving her desperately trying to reconnect with 61 missed calls the next day. Hey everyone, I'm Daniel, 31 years old, and I've been married to my wife Rebecca, 29, for almost 6 years now. We met back in college. I was that guy who played lacrosse and hit the gym religiously 5 days a week. While I majored in engineering, she studied art history. Not trying to brag or anything, but I've always been the guy who had his life together. These days, I work in construction management and make good money. We own our house in Sacramento. I paid the down payment myself from my savings. I really thought we had a good life together. I've always been the provider, the rock, the one who fixed everything from broken dishwashers to financial problems. Rebecca used to be different when we first met. She was supportive, kind, and always telling me how proud she was of me. But something changed over the last couple of years. It happened so gradually that I barely noticed it at first. It was like how a frog won't jump out of water if you heat it slowly, or so I've heard. There were little comments here and there, less physical affection, more time on her phone, and girls' nights that kept getting more frequent and longer. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, or maybe she was stressed about something. You know how sometimes someone says something and it just hits you different? Like you've been ignoring all these little signs for months, maybe years, and then boom, one sentence and everything becomes crystal clear. Like someone just wiped the fog off a mirror. That's what happened when Rebecca said, "You're lucky I haven't left yet." Just like that. Casual as hell. She didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. No anger, no emotion, just stating a fact like she was telling me we needed eggs from the store or something. We'd been sitting at the dinner table, the one I built with my own hands last summer. I had just asked if she wanted to maybe plan a weekend away, just the two of us. That was her response. "You're lucky I haven't left yet." I didn't say anything back right away. What could I say? I just sat there across from her, my fork halfway to my mouth, watching her face, trying to process what she meant. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves. It was how she said them, with complete indifference, like she couldn't care less about my reaction or how those words might make me feel, like she was commenting on the weather. In that moment, everything clicked. All those nights she was glued to her phone. All the plans she made without me. How she barely even noticed I was in the room half the time. All those girls' nights that kept getting more frequent. The way she rolled her eyes whenever I suggested we do something together. The constant comments about how her friends' husbands took them on expensive vacations while I just worked all the time. Despite the fact that my working all the time paid for our house and her new Toyota. The way she'd sigh heavily if I touched her shoulder or tried to hug her. It all made sense now. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just there, taking up space in a marriage that was already over in her mind. I could have argued with her, could have demanded to know what she meant. But honestly, what was the point? She'd already decided how she felt. And the part that really stung was how she just assumed I'd take it. Like I'd swallow those words and move on. Like I had with all the other little jabs and comments over the years. Like I was some kind of emotional punching bag who'd always be there no matter how she treated me. Not this time, not this time. I looked down at my plate. The meal I'd cooked, by the way, because she didn't feel like it even though she'd been home all day while I was at a construction site for 10 hours. I felt something shift inside me, like a switch being flipped, or maybe more like a dam breaking. All the frustration, all the hurt, all the confusion of the last year or two suddenly crystallized into perfect clarity. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I got up from the table slowly, pushing my chair back. She didn't even bother looking up from whatever was so important on her phone. Probably her feminist TikTok videos she was always watching, or texting her friend Madison who'd been divorced twice and hated men with a passion. Madison was always in Rebecca's ear with stuff like "men ain't shit" and "know your worth, queen," while conveniently forgetting to mention her own track record of failed relationships. I walked to our bedroom without saying a word. No drama, no slamming doors, none of that crap. My dad always taught me that real men handle their business with dignity, not emotional outbursts. So I just went to the closet, pulled out her expensive suitcase, the one I bought her for our anniversary last year, $400 from that fancy luggage store she liked, and laid it open on the bed. Then I started packing her stuff, one piece at a time, real careful and methodical. The sound of the hangers sliding on the rod was weirdly calming, almost therapeutic. I focused on folding everything neatly. Her favorite designer jeans that cost more than my work boots, the ones she bought with my credit card. Those tops she always wears to her women's empowerment meetups, where they mostly just complained about their husbands from what I could tell. Enough stuff so she wouldn't need to come back right away. I even packed that stupid "The Future is Female" t-shirt she loved wearing around the house, the one she got after she started following that radical feminist podcast. I made sure to pack her favorite shoes too, the expensive ones I got her for Christmas that she wore exactly twice before deciding they weren't in style anymore, and the jewelry her mom gave her, and the designer bags she kept buying even though I kept telling her we should be saving for a rainy day. I wasn't trying to be petty. I was just being thorough. I kind of thought she'd come check what I was doing after a while, maybe laugh it off like it was some kind of joke. "What are you doing, Daniel? Stop being so dramatic." Something like that. But she didn't. Minutes passed, like a good 20 minutes, and she didn't move from the couch. She wasn't worried. She didn't think I'd actually do anything about her little comment. And that told me everything I needed to know about where we stood. In her mind, I was a pushover who would never stand up for himself. So I kept packing. I went to the bathroom, grabbed her expensive skincare products from the cabinet, the ones I paid for, like that face cream that cost $95 for a tiny jar, and put them in a separate bag. I wasn't trying to be petty or make a mess of her things. This wasn't some dramatic movie scene where I throw her clothes out on the lawn or cut them up with scissors. This was different. This was me, 6'2" and 220 pounds of mostly muscle from years of construction work and gym time, finally standing up for myself in the most controlled way possible. I've never been the type of guy to lose my temper. Even when other guys on the construction site get into heated arguments, I'm usually the one who stays calm and breaks it up. My foreman always says I should have been a mediator or something. But being calm doesn't mean being weak, and that's what Rebecca never understood. She mistook my patience and self-control for weakness, my desire to make peace for desperation. She thought she could push me as far as she wanted, and I'd never push back. As I packed her things, I thought about all the times I'd compromised. All the times I'd apologized for things that weren't even my fault, just to keep the peace. The vacations I couldn't take because I was working overtime to pay for the lifestyle she wanted. The friends I'd lost touch with because she always had some reason why we couldn't hang out with them. The hobbies I'd given up because she made me feel guilty about spending time on anything that didn't involve her. The way she'd roll her eyes when I talked about my job or my interests, like what I cared about didn't matter. This was me showing her something, that I wasn't afraid of her leaving anymore, that I wasn't going to beg her to stay, that maybe, just maybe, she was the lucky one in this relationship. Not me. When I finished packing, I zipped up the suitcase and carried it out to the living room with one hand, not even struggling with the weight. I used to compete in strongman competitions in college. I still hold the record for the farmer's walk at my university, so her suitcase felt like nothing. The wheels made this soft clicking sound against the hardwood floor that I installed myself last spring as I rolled it toward the front door. That's when she finally looked up, phone still in hand, but now she was actually paying attention. Her eyes went from the suitcase to me, and I could see the confusion on her face. She blinked a couple times, like she couldn't quite process what she was seeing, like her brain couldn't compute that I was actually doing something instead of just taking her crap like usual. "What are you doing?" she asked, that entitled tone in her voice I'd come to know so well. The same tone she used when she asked why dinner wasn't ready yet, or why I hadn't fixed something around the house immediately after working a 12-hour day. I took a deep breath and looked her straight in the eyes. I didn't raise my voice, didn't get emotional, just stated facts. "You said I was lucky you haven't left yet," I told her, keeping my voice steady and deep. "So I'm making it easier for you." I set the suitcase by the door with a thud, then stepped aside and waited, crossing my arms over my chest. She didn't move at first. She just sat there looking uncertain for the first time in forever. Not angry, not dismissive, just surprised. Like she was seeing me differently all of a sudden. Like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Her eyes kept going back and forth between me and that suitcase by the door, like she was trying to connect the dots and failing. I could tell exactly what was happening in her head. She was waiting for me to break first, to say something that would give her the upper hand, to turn this into just another argument where she could roll her eyes and walk away, knowing I'd still be there when she came back, probably with flowers and an apology for something I didn't even do. That was our usual pattern. She'd push me. I'd eventually snap and say something out of frustration. Then she'd act hurt, and I'd spend the next week trying to make it up to her. Wash, rinse, repeat. But I didn't give her that satisfaction this time. I just stood there, arms crossed over my chest, face blank. If she was expecting me to drop to my knees and beg her to stay, she was going to be real disappointed. I'm not that man anymore. That man died the second she said those words at the dinner table. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I was used to filling these silences, used to being the one who couldn't stand the tension and would say anything to break it. But not this time. This time, I let the silence do the work for me. I let her sit with the weight of her own words, the consequences of her own actions. After what felt like forever, but was probably only a minute or two, she put her phone down, first time all night, and sat up straighter. "Daniel," she said, her voice softer now, using that tone she used when she wanted something from me. "What's going on? Why are you acting like this?" I almost laughed. Like I was the one acting strange. Like packing her bags after she basically told me she was just waiting for the right moment to leave was some kind of overreaction. "I'm not acting like anything," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm just listening to what you're telling me." The silence between us felt thick enough to cut with a knife. I could practically see the gears turning in her head. She wasn't used to this version of me. She was used to being the one with all the power. The one who decided when we fought, when we made up, when we talked, when we didn't. She was used to being able to say something like, "You're lucky I haven't left yet," and know that I'd just take it and move on. But now, with her packed suitcase sitting by the open door, something had changed. I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. I wasn't the same guy who used to apologize just to keep the peace. I'd spent the last 6 years of my life bending over backwards for this woman, changing myself to fit whatever she wanted me to be, walking on eggshells to avoid upsetting her. And for what? To be told I was lucky she hadn't left yet? Like she was doing me some kind of favor by being my wife? Finally, she crossed her arms and tilted her head, her voice sharper than before. "So that's it? You're just what? Kicking me out? Is this some kind of toxic masculinity? Did you read some Jordan Peterson or something?" I almost laughed at her throwing those terms at me. Classic Rebecca, always ready with the buzzwords she picked up from her feminist podcasts and Instagram accounts. Always quick to label any man who stood up for himself as toxic or problematic. I shook my head. "No, I'm just giving you what you want. You clearly don't want to be here. So why pretend?" She opened her mouth like she was going to argue, but then stopped, because we both knew the truth. She'd been waiting for me to beg her to stay. She expected me to panic, to try and grab onto any last bit of control I had, to promise I'd change, to ask what I could do better, to grovel for her to give our marriage another chance. But I wasn't doing that, and without my resistance, she had nothing to push against. It was like she'd been leaning on a door, pushing with all her might, and I'd suddenly opened it. Now she was falling forward with nothing to catch her. She looked at the suitcase again, and I could see her struggling with the reality of the situation. She'd been holding this over my head for so long, treating the idea of leaving like some kind of weapon. Something she could dangle just close enough to keep me on edge, but never actually follow through with. Now the choice was right in front of her. All she had to do was pick up that handle, walk out that door, and prove that she really meant what she'd been threatening all this time. But that would mean giving up the nice house I bought us, the comfortable lifestyle my job provided, the security she'd gotten used to. She'd have to pay her own bills, fix her own problems, be an actual adult for once, instead of treating me like some combination of ATM, handyman, and emotional punching bag. "You can't be serious," she said finally, her voice a mix of disbelief and anger. "You're really going to throw away 6 years of marriage over one comment?" There it was, the minimizing, the gaslighting, acting like I was overreacting to one comment instead of responding to years of emotional manipulation and neglect. "Is that what you think this is about?" I asked quietly. "One comment?" She threw her hands up. "What else would it be about? I say one thing and you go nuclear, pack my bags and kick me out. What kind of man does that?" "The kind who's tired of being treated like he doesn't matter," I said simply. "The kind who's done being taken for granted." She scoffed, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Uncertainty. Like maybe, just maybe, she was starting to realize this wasn't going how she planned. I could see the hesitation in how she stood there, halfway between the couch and the door. She knew that the second she walked through that door, there would be no coming back. We both knew it. She took a slow breath, her expression getting tight, like she was trying to figure out her next move. I didn't say anything. I wasn't going to make this easier for her. If she wanted to go, she could go. But if she wanted to stay, It wasn't going to be on her terms anymore. Her arms tightened across her chest, her nails digging into her skin. She wasn't just hesitating now, she was calculating. I could see it in how her eyes moved, scanning my face for any weakness, any crack in my resolve. I'd seen this look before. It was the same one she used when she was trying to figure out how to get me to agree to something expensive or unreasonable. The look she got right before she'd either start a fight or turn on the charm, depending on which she thought would work better. Then she let out this short, disbelieving laugh. "You're really doing this?" she said, shaking her head. "Unbelievable. What? Did you read some alpha male on Reddit?" She was trying to shame me now, trying to make me feel stupid for standing up for myself, as if having self-respect was something to be embarrassed about. She didn't move toward the suitcase or the door. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate step toward me. "You're throwing me out because of one comment?" she challenged, her voice getting sharper, testing me. "Are you serious? God, men are so fragile. One little thing and you completely fall apart." I didn't react because we both knew it wasn't just one comment. This was about everything that led up to this moment. Every look of indifference, every annoyed sigh, every night she turned away from me in bed, every time she made it clear she saw me as an obligation instead of a partner, every time she went out with her friends and came home at 2 a.m. smelling like perfume and not answering my texts, every time she made me feel like I wasn't enough despite working 60-hour weeks to give her the life she wanted. Every birthday or anniversary she forgot while I remembered hers with thoughtful gifts. Every time she dismissed my accomplishments at work or the things I was proud of. Every time she compared me unfavorably to her friends' husbands or boyfriends. Every time she made plans without consulting me as if my time and preferences didn't matter. Every time she rolled her eyes when I suggested date night or tried to reconnect. She expected me to crack under her words, to get emotional, to turn this into a fight where she could regain control. But I wasn't playing along. "I'm not throwing you out," I said evenly. "You made it clear you don't want to be here. I'm just making it easier for you." Her jaw tightened, and I saw uncertainty flicker across her face again before she masked it. "Do you even hear yourself?" she asked with a dry laugh. "You think you're proving something right now? You think this makes you the bigger person? What? You think you're some kind of hero in this situation?" I didn't answer because this wasn't about being the bigger person. This wasn't about being a hero. This was about me refusing to be the smaller one anymore. This was about me choosing myself after years of putting her first. "You know what?" she said, her voice rising. "Fine. If that's how you want to play this, fine. But don't think for a second that this is all on me. You haven't exactly been husband of the year, Daniel. You're always working, always at the gym, always with your friends watching basketball or whatever. When was the last time you asked me about my day? When was the last time you really listened to me?" I almost laughed at that. I'd spent years listening to her complaints, her criticisms, her endless dissatisfaction with everything I did. But I wasn't going to get dragged into defending myself. That's what she wanted, to turn this around, make it about my failings instead of her words and actions. "If that's how you felt," I said quietly, "you could have talked to me about it instead of telling me I'm lucky you haven't left yet." Her eyes locked onto mine, waiting for some kind of reaction, something she could use. When I gave her nothing, she stepped closer, her voice dropping lower. "You want me to leave? Fine, but don't pretend this is some noble move. Don't act like you're doing me a favor. You have no idea what I've been dealing with being married to you." I still didn't speak. I didn't need to, and she hated that. I could see the frustration building under the surface, the way her fingers twitched at her sides. This wasn't going how she planned. She had spent so much time convincing herself that I needed her more than she needed me, that she could throw out a line like, "You're lucky I haven't left yet," and I would jump through hoops to prove her wrong, to keep her here. She never expected me to call her bluff. She never expected me to stand tall, shoulders back, looking down at her with complete indifference to her manipulation tactics. I'm not a small guy. Like I said, 6, 2 inches, and 220 pounds. I still hit the gym 4 to 5 times a week despite my busy work schedule. I've always been physically imposing, but I've also always been careful with that fact. Gentle, even. Never used my size to intimidate her or anyone else. But in that moment, I could see that she was suddenly aware of the physical difference between us. Aware that I was no longer making myself smaller to make her comfortable. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing heavy, her expression a mix of defiance and something else. Something that almost looked like regret, but not quite. Then she exhaled sharply and turned away, pacing toward the couch. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration in every movement. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "You're being ridiculous. I can't believe you're acting this way after everything I've done for you." I wanted to ask what exactly she thought she'd done for me, but I held my tongue. This wasn't about trading grievances or keeping score. This was about the fact that she didn't want to be in this marriage anymore, but didn't have the courage to end it herself. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, muscles tensed, waiting. Because now she had a choice to make, and for the first time, I wasn't going to make it for her. She paced back and forth, her steps uneven. She was stalling, and we both knew it. Her arms stayed crossed, her jaw set tight, like she was physically holding herself together. But I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twitched slightly against her skin. She wasn't leaving, not yet. Because now that it was real, now that the suitcase was packed and the door was open, something was different. She had spent so much time making sure I knew she was willing to leave, dangled it in front of me as a constant reminder that my place in her life wasn't guaranteed. But the moment she actually had to decide, the weight of it hit her. She was suddenly realizing what she'd be giving up. The security, the comfort, the man who, despite her constant criticism and emotional games, had always been there, always provided, always protected. The house she loved showing off to her friends. The lifestyle my income afforded her. The fact that she could work part-time at a boutique, making barely above minimum wage because my salary covered most of our expenses. "This isn't fair," she said finally, turning back to face me. "You can't just spring this on me out of nowhere." "It's not out of nowhere," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "You've been checking out of this marriage for a long time, Rebecca. You've made it clear how you feel. I'm just finally listening." She shook her head, a humorless laugh escaping her. "So that's it. One comment and you're done. Just like that. If that's what you want to believe, go ahead." She stared at me, searching my face for any sign of weakness, any indication that I might back down. When she found none, her expression hardened. "You know what? Fine. If that's how you want it, fine. I'll go, but don't think this is over." She walked to the suitcase, grabbed the handle, and pulled it up with more force than necessary. "I'll be at Madison's. I'll come get the rest of my stuff later." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. A part of me was surprised she was actually going through with it. Another part relieved that this was almost over. She walked to the door, then turned back, her expression a mix of anger and something that might have been hurt. "I hope you're happy with yourself." "This isn't about being happy," I said quietly. "It's about being honest." She scoffed, pulled open the door, and stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind her with a finality that should have felt devastating. Instead, it felt like the first breath of fresh air after being underwater too long. I stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of her rolling the suitcase down the hall to the elevator. Then I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took out a cold beer. I sat down at the table, the same table where she dropped that bomb earlier, and tried to process what had just happened. I should have felt sad. I should have felt like my world was falling apart. Instead, I felt lighter, like I'd put down a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from her. "I can't believe you're doing this to us." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I thought that was the end of it. I figured she'd stay at Madison's for a while. We'd communicate through lawyers and eventually go our separate ways. I was already mentally preparing for the divorce, figuring out what assets we'd need to split, wondering if she'd try to take half of everything despite contributing next to nothing financially. But 2 days later, everything changed again. I was at work overseeing a project when my phone started blowing up with notifications. Text messages, voicemails, all from Rebecca. At first, I ignored them. I had a job to do, and I wasn't going to let our personal drama affect my work. But when my phone rang for the 6th time in an hour, I finally stepped away to check what was going on. 15 missed calls, 23 text messages, all from Rebecca. The texts ranged from angry, "How could you do this to me?" to pleading, "Please call me back, we need to talk," to threatening, "You're going to regret this." But it was the last few that caught my attention. "I need to talk to you about Thomas." "Please, Daniel, it's important." I made a mistake. Thomas was her boss at the boutique where she worked. A married guy in his mid-40s who drove a Porsche and always had a fresh tan, even in the dead of winter. I'd met him a few times at store events, never liked him much. He had a way of looking at Rebecca that made me uncomfortable, but whenever I mentioned it, she'd accused me of being jealous and insecure. I called her back during my lunch break. She answered on the first ring. Daniel, she said, her voice shaky. Thank God, we need to talk. I'm listening, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Not over the phone, she replied. Can you come to Madison's after work, please? It's important. Every instinct told me to say no, to keep my distance, to protect myself from whatever new manipulation she was planning. But curiosity got the better of me. I'll be there at 6, I said, then hung up before she could say anything else. The rest of the day dragged. My mind kept going back to that name, Thomas. I had suspected something was off for months, but I'd always pushed those thoughts away. Trusted her, even when my gut told me not to. Now I was wondering if my worst fears were about to be confirmed. At 6 sharp, I knocked on Madison's apartment door. Rebecca opened it, looking like hell. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, like she'd been sleeping in them. Behind her, I could see Madison sitting on the couch, looking uncomfortable. Thanks for coming, Rebecca said, stepping aside to let me in. Mads, can you give us a minute? Madison nodded and quickly retreated to what I assumed was her bedroom. I stood awkwardly in the living room, not wanting to sit down, not wanting to get comfortable. So, I said, what's going on? Rebecca took a deep breath, like she was steeling herself for something difficult. Thomas fired me yesterday. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He said, she continued, he said I was creating a hostile work environment, that I was unstable. Her voice cracked on the last word. He gave me my final paycheck and told me not to come back. I still didn't speak. I was waiting for the rest of it, the part that explained the urgency, the multiple calls and texts. She must have realized I wasn't going to make this easy for her because she continued, her words coming faster now. The thing is, Thomas and I, we had a thing. Not like a full affair or anything, she added quickly, seeing my expression harden. Just some flirting, some texts. Maybe a little more. Define a little more, I said, my voice cold. She looked down at her hands. We kissed a few times after work, and there was one time at a conference in Las Vegas. We shared a room. There it was. The confirmation of what I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to believe. I should have felt angry, hurt, betrayed. Instead, I just felt tired. So tired. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I made a mistake, she said, looking up at me, tears in her eyes. Because I realize now what I threw away. Because his wife found out and threatened to tell you if I didn't. And I wanted you to hear it from me first. Of course. She wasn't confessing out of guilt or a desire to come clean. She was covering her ass, trying to control the narrative before someone else could. And the part about him firing you? I prompted. That's true too. His wife made him. She works in HR for the company that owns the boutique. She could have gotten him fired, but instead she made him fire me. I nodded slowly, processing this information. So now you've lost your job, your affair partner, and your marriage, all in 1 week. She flinched at my bluntness but didn't deny it. Daniel, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I want to fix this. I want to come home. I almost laughed. You want to come home after cheating on me? After treating me like garbage for years? After telling me I was lucky you hadn't left yet? I didn't mean that, she said quickly. I was just, I don't know, trying to hurt you, I guess. I was confused and unhappy. But it wasn't about you. It was about me. At least we can agree on that part, I said. It was about you. It's always been about you. She took a step toward me, her hand reaching out. I stepped back, maintaining the distance between us. Daniel, please, she pleaded. I love you. I made a terrible mistake. Several mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to remember the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. The woman who used to look at me like I hung the moon. The woman who used to curl up against me at night like I was her sanctuary. That woman was gone, if she'd ever really existed at all. I don't believe you, I said simply. And even if I did, it wouldn't matter. You don't treat people you love the way you've treated me. I can change, she pleaded. I can be better. Just give me another chance. I shook my head. No. The word hung between us, small but definitive. No. Such a simple word, but one I'd rarely used with her. I'd always been yes. Yes to what she wanted. Yes to her demands. Yes to her criticisms. Yes to diminishing myself to make her comfortable. Not anymore. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. I showed her a piece of evidence. The bank statements showing she'd been transferring small amounts. A few hundred here, a few hundred there, from our joint account to her personal account. Building up a safety net for herself. Planning her exit strategy while spending my money. I've known for months, I told her. Just wanted to see how far you'd go. Turns out pretty far. Her face went pale. Daniel, I can explain. I cut her off. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the divorce papers I've already had drawn up. I pulled them from my jacket pocket. I'd picked them up from my lawyer that morning, half expecting I might need them today. They're very generous considering the circumstances. You get nothing except your personal belongings. No alimony, no house, no cars, nothing I worked for while you were busy betraying me. You can't do that, she shouted, suddenly finding her voice again. I'm entitled to half of everything. That's how divorce works. Not when there's documented infidelity and financial fraud, I said, tapping my phone. My lawyer has everything, and Thomas's wife does too. I actually met her for coffee last week. Nice lady. She was very appreciative of the evidence. That's when it hit her, the reality of her situation. Her boss had fired her to save his own marriage. She'd have no job, no house, no money. She'd been planning to leave me, but on her terms, when she had everything lined up. Now she had nothing. Daniel, please, she said, her voice suddenly small. I made a mistake. We can work through this. You said I was lucky you hadn't left yet, I reminded her. So now's your chance. She started crying then. Real tears, not the fake ones she'd used to manipulate me in the past. Big, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I didn't mean it. I was just scared and confused, and I didn't know what I wanted. I do now. I want you, Daniel. I want our marriage. Please. I can't do this on my own. I need you. Please, she continued, dropping to her knees in front of me, reaching for my hands. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit hanging out with Madison and those other toxic friends. I'll be a better wife. I promise. I looked down at her. This woman I had loved for so long and felt nothing. No anger, no hatred, no desire for payback, just emptiness where there had once been love. Stand up, I said quietly. Have some dignity. She looked up at me through tear-filled eyes, mascara running down her cheeks. Daniel, the papers are ready to sign, I said, placing them on Madison's coffee table. You can come by the house tomorrow between 10 and noon to get the rest of your things. I won't be there. I'll have a friend supervise. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice small and broken. I have no job, no money. That's not my problem anymore, I replied. Maybe call your mom or Thomas. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. She flinched at that. His wife made him block my number. She's monitoring all his communications. Sounds like a smart woman, I said. She's protecting what's hers, something I should have done a long time ago. Rebecca wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. What if I don't sign? I shrugged. Then we do this the hard way. Full disclosure of everything in court. Your affair becomes public record. Thomas gets dragged in to testify. His wife finds out every detail. Your parents find out. Everyone finds out. She closed her eyes, shoulders slumping in defeat. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've had plenty of time to think. While you were busy with Thomas? She looked at me one last time, a final plea in her eyes. When I didn't respond, she reached for the papers with shaking hands. Do you have a pen? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I handed her mine. I watched as she signed her name on each marked line, effectively ending our marriage. When she finished, I took the papers and stood to leave. She grabbed my arm as I passed. Is this really what you want? To throw away everything we had? I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. You already did that, I said. I'm just making it official.